read our minds based on our choices. So would you, it's already starting to do that now, as you say, like with Amazon sending you recommendations. It's almost, is that not, based on what he's saying, is that not a kind of artificial intelligence as well?
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's one that we're quite used to. Like, I go to a bookshop round the corner from me and the lady can read my mind. She can. When I go in, she says, oh, here's one you like. And she's nearly always right.
Do you expect artificial intelligence to be able to make creative, disruptive leaps, as we've seen with Miles Davis, some of his records, or punk music, or will that kind of creative technology appear?
I think it depends to some degree on I'd like to think it depends to some degree on the minds behind the makers of it.
You can build a leap in. Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
But I mean, could we imagine the leaps of Miles Davis? I mean, then you have a genius behind programming.
Well, different leaps than Miles Davis, leaps that we can see as unheard of leaps, that we know Miles Davis leaps.
So what remains for us? What do we have?
Everything else remains for us. There are all kinds of leaps we've never seen or heard.
Yeah, but I mean, what are we then as humans if an artificial intelligence can replicate or even match our creativity?
What are we as humans anyway?
Yeah,
if we separate off all the tools that we use, we don't exist any longer. The one very interesting fact that not very many people know is that the human brain has been shrinking for 20,000 years. And in 20,000 years, it's lost 15% of its volume. That's a tennis ball. That's a huge amount to lose in such a short period. And what can be the possible explanation for this? The only possible explanation is that we don't need so much brain as we needed, because we partake in everybody else's. When 20,000 years ago, your brain had to calculate how to get food, what to do with food, how to remain alive in all various sorts of other ways, you had a lot of work to do with your brain. Now you get other people to do the work for you. I don't know how to build a plane, for example. I don't even know how to build a bicycle. But I don't have to, because someone in Denmark will build me a bicycle.
True.
So I think there's a lot of scaring going on about that side of things. I mean, we all are technological artists. We're sitting in the studio there with Laurie in particular, with sort of state-of-the-art technology. But I don't think, oh my God, that makes her work so inhuman. It just gives her a whole new range of ways of being human. Good point. If you can't, when you listen to Laurie, say, oh Jesus, she's been taken over by technology.
Sometimes. True. No, it wasn't actually because I was being negative about it. I was just curious about what will be the distinguishing factor between humans and artificial intelligence.
Well, like I said, I don't think it's going to be like that. It's going to be a transition, a continuation of the transition that's been going on for since settled humans, since
Slow surprise.
10,000. A slow surprise, yeah, very slow surprise. And there are occasional highlights, like when the computer that beat the Go champion came up with a genuinely original move. That was a surprise. Nobody expected that. It was beyond the level of intelligence that was expected from that particular artificial intelligence.
And probably the biggest jump was happened in the shortest period of time.
The Chinese thing.
Oh,
sorry.
Which was when basically everything in our Western civilization was invented more or less at once. Ancient Greece, the philosophy philosophy, history, algebra, physics, poetry,
Astronomy.
astronomy, and in a frightening, giant blast. And I was I was on a committee with and the opening ceremony of the Olympics in Athens, and we were supposed to do a lot of referring to this period of time, and I was the only American, and I never experienced, I don't think I ever met smarter people than the Greeks on this committee. They would just get an idea and they'd kind of look up like the idea was a chandelier we'd all just built that was kind of starting to revolve like this, and they would turn it to things. Let's look at it this way, and they'd go, can you look at something like that? And so I had a very stupid question for them, and I had a tutor. My tutor was the guy who was the archaeologist who was repairing the Parthenon, piece by piece. They were looking for hundreds of years on this. And I thought I'm going to ask this guy the question because he looks exactly like Plato. And I thought, he's going to know. But the question was so stupid. It was about this leap. It was about why.
This what? This
The leap we were talking about, like, suddenly lurches forward. Why, with all this amazing, incredible surge forward, all of these fields, why aren't we 1,000 times smarter now? You know, what happened? What, and he said, well, I'll tell you. I said, you know? So I'll tell you what happened. At that time, after the surge, or around that time, people were coming to the Parthenon, and they were bringing kind of offerings, the kouros, the athletes. They were taking one step, very primitive things, almost Egyptian looking, and very, very kind of crude, and they were offering them to Athena, the goddess of war and wisdom. And they were gradually, these offerings got more and more sophisticated, more contrapposto, more lifelike, kind of rather than. And it began looking, he said, kind of like an uncurated biennale. Just they're all posted around the Parthenon. And then he said, people came and they said, and this I'll never forget, I can't worship in an art museum. And that really was so chilling to me. He said that, people came there and they thought, this is nice, but I'm going back to where the gods came from, where they originally came from, the groves, the streams, the mountains. I'm going there to find them. And this is what I'm looking for. Not this stuff over here, doing this and that in such inventive ways. And so he said, this is what happened when the need to believe something is more important than the need to know something. And I thought, what is that? Why would that? And I thought, wait a second. I'm an American citizen, and our need to believe something rather than know something is so much stronger. And I think it's kind of a trend as well, that you just need to have somebody tell that you feel is right somehow, not that you know is right. So I think with these big events like this of human effort and leaps are really scary. I think we're kind of in the middle of one now, but I don't think that we understand it so well, and we resist it also.
Do you think they did though? Do you think they understood it while they were experiencing it?
Do I think the Greeks understood what was happening when they invented everything? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
They knew this was and in the Renaissance too. And in my tiny little experience with invention of forms and being an artist in the 70s in New York, we were going to reinvent the world. We were making these things that no one could have imagined before. And we were very, very, very self-conscious about that. We knew that this was new. And we were very, very proud of it. We also knew that we would never make a living doing that, which is a big difference between art now and then. That it was completely off the map in terms of what you would do as your, your career, let's say. There's no idea of a career at all.
Well, now people can't live without music, but they don't, the value for it is completely, seemingly expired somehow. Nobody buys records anymore.
Well, people wonder where the picture is. Where's the soundtrack? I mean, where's the image? It's just, why am I listening to the soundtrack? Have you noticed that as well?
What I have noticed is that if I look at my daughters, for example, they treasure music and like they treasure water. So they expect to be able to switch it on and get it to flow limitlessly. But they take it very seriously. Yeah. It's a big part of their lives. And I don't think because I'm a musician, but all their friends are the same. But they have so much more eclectic taste than I ever had. For example, when I was young, it was a big breakthrough for me to get into early blues records from the late 20s or something like that. So that was music that was 40 years old at that time. Their collections include music that is 70 years old, and everything in between from 70 years ago to now, from everywhere over the world. So they feel they have a kind of right to access all the music of history and all the music of the world. In the same way, for instance, as we feel we have a right to travel anywhere. We take planes and visit places in ways that our grandparents could never have imagined and would have probably thought was a little bit obscene and careless.
It's still like that in the South.
Yeah. But, the idea of going to, Dubai for a weekend would have seemed unthinkable to my
I think that's a
parents.
very European perspective. Because maybe not in New York City perhaps, but so many Americans, especially in the middle, they not only do they have a very limited view of geography of the world, but they don't travel. A lot of them don't anyway, from my understanding.
I do remember being in a hotel once, and an American lady asked me where I came from, and I said London, and she said, "Is that in Paris?"
Did you say yes?
Texas.
So if music is building identity, which I'm a strong, firm believer in, then I guess that the new generations will have much more complex identities through the fact that they can access all kinds of music.
Good theory. Yeah. Very true.
Do you believe in, I think...
Well, there's two things going on. The difference, I think, now is that people listen to music much more casually than we did. So they listen to lots of it, but not very many things in the incredible, obsessive, nerd-like depth that we used to listen to music in. Because, having one album that you really loved and just listening to it so you knew every bloody crack on the record, every click, you knew exactly where it fell in the bar, sort of thing. I don't think many people listen to music like that anymore. But this is a characteristic of it's the trajectory of all art forms to go through that. If you think of the early days of the novel, everybody knew who all the novelists were. Everybody read the same things, basically. And there was a canon that you had to work through. You had to know Dostoevsky and Tolstoy and Dickens and all the others. And everybody did. Just like in the 60s, everybody knew who Jimi Hendrix was and the Queen and the Beatles. That was the canon. Well, of course, as an art form fills out and more people join it, you can't possibly know the whole territory with that same familiarity. So you don't. You know a lot more things, but probably a little bit more shallowly.
I think that does reflect what you're saying about more complex identities, actually, because I think that you probably find not only just a limited people. friends who maybe, perceive the world through, limited music that they discover. But you begin to find people more fine-tuned to the specifics and the obscure things that you find yourself attracted to. So it's like it's also in some way it's kind of like a curious form of language that's unspoken.
Yeah, it's a community maker. You belong to. I remember how in England you either belonged to the Rolling Stones community or the Beatles community in 1963. You couldn't belong to both because they were seen as ideologically incompatible. They were. It's funny because music, again, with all art forms, go through a certain phase where they become ideological statements, and then they lose that actually after a while.
And so there are those kind of musical tribes.
I don't think so, no.
Who dress and eat and look and talk.
Yeah.
Like their tribe.
Maybe I just don't notice it because I'm older, but I don't feel that that's true any longer. That music has a tribal quality to it.
What about the Believers?
The what?
Like the Justin Believers, that's what they
That's a tribe right there. What built your identities musically? Laurie?
Probably as a young artist, listening to Phil Glass, probably, and particularly going to the rehearsals of that music and hearing 12 pieces full of 30-second notes for 6 hours. And you just lay on the studio floor and just flood over you and so. And I just remember a lot of people saying, I do my best work at Phil's rehearsals. You just lie there and you're, it was an extreme kind of meditation. And a lot of artists at that time were working in those kind of extremely repetitive forms and a very long time frame. And I love that way of doing music. Wasn't necessarily the way I did it, but I felt that that's what my ear was tuned to, for sure. And I wasn't either the Stones or the Beatles at all. I didn't really listen to them much at all. What about you? What were you tuned to?
Sorry, I started off with doo-wop. And I think doo-wop seemed so alien to me and so exotic because I grew up in an obscure part of England near two great big American air bases. So we had lots of American GIs, and in our little town there were lots and lots of coffee bars with jukeboxes full of southern doo-wop. It was just something you never heard on the radio, so it had this amazing transgressive quality to it. Hearing these voices, I'd never heard voices like that. And it was years before I realised that all those singers were black people. I just didn't know, because there were no photographs of them or anything like that. They all had names like the Shantays and the Delrons and so on, You had no idea who they were. There was this very alien music, and it was really the sensation that I always wanted in music. I wanted strangeness. I wanted music that presented me with an alien civilization of some kind. So that was really my first impression. Then, after that, I got into two things simultaneously. One was the Ray Conniff singers, who were the sort of essence of easy listening, but I just loved the sound.
Really?
Yeah, that's where music for airports came from. Well, it's interesting. If you don't know any of the cultural baggage that something has, you can really appreciate it in a way that nobody else does. I mean, I remember when I first got into Arabic music, I was totally in love with this singer called Samira Taufik. And it was ages before some kindly Arabic person pointed out to me that she was kind of regarded as a rather low-grade pop star. In fact, she was an actress who did a few records, you know. But to me, she was the greatest singer on earth. I just didn't know the negative story about her, you know.
Did it change you?
No, I still like her, yeah. And then, so there was Ray Conniff on the one hand, and then there was, I heard Weber for the first time when I was 12. You know, the 5 little pieces, I think they're called, of Weber. And I thought they were just amazing. They were as amazing as doo-wop to me. It was the first music after doo-wop where I thought, Christ, is that music? Can that really be music? I couldn't stop listening to them. So those were about as far apart as you could go on the cultural spectrum, I guess. And then later on, of course, the reason I guess I got into pop music was the Velvet Underground. Because there was a band who, some of whom, like me, were non-musicians. And they sounded better than any of the musicians. So I thought, there is a vacancy.
If I'm really honest, I would say that probably the biggest influence I had was listening to the Swamps in the Deep South. And we lived on this huge farm, and there were pecan orchards, you know, many acres, and there was a huge swamp behind that. And I used to be so beguiled by it, the way that it changed not only by season but by weather and by time of day or night. And I used to take these little boating trips in this aluminum boat out into. I was a completely insane thing to do, but I might sneak out of the house and go and take this aluminum boat into the swamps at night. I used to listen to the panorama of sound, and I feel like there's 3 things that really are present in my work, and or the work that I find most attractive to others, and it's mystery, seduction, and otherworldliness. And I found, you know, I grew up around a lot of country music and rap, and it never appealed to me at the time. And I guess almost as a reaction, I started listening to Mozart and learned about the well-known composers, because I wasn't really exposed to a lot. And then there was I discovered in the library a Stockhausen record. That's how I came across him. And I began to delve myself into different avant-garde composers. And then in time I discovered both of your works as well. And Aphex Twin, The Velvet Underground, Björk. Yeah, those are some of the people that I really, as I progressed into my adolescence, began to discover. But I didn't know any of this as a child, or in my early years. It wasn't until later that I had the opportunity to discover these things.
Mystery, that's also something you've been talking about, Brian, with when it comes to music, that there has to be mystery in the music at one point. It's really interesting when you talk about listening to music where you don't know the background, because I think that the non-biographical listening is super interesting, because it rips the narrative, the consensual narrative from the music, and you can experience it in your own way. And that's the possibility of having a mysterious experience with music beyond what we all agree upon. But we can't really do that anymore, can we? That mistake, that misunderstanding, well, not a misunderstanding, but lack of knowledge that these were black singers, black musicians, is not there anymore, is it? Where do you see the mystery music now?
Oh, there's plenty of opportunities.
Oh, good. I'm happy to.
I think that these two are great examples of that, to be honest with you. And I I think that I like artists who try and uncover the unseen somehow quite often. And so there are people out there who are making extraordinary work that still has a sense of mystery to it.
Also, sometimes you hear something and you think, Christ, I've never heard that before. I've never heard anything like that before. For example, something that's been happening recently that I find very interesting. Now, because we all work on computers, it's possible to make music that is ruthlessly in time and ruthlessly in tune. So now there are some very interesting bands come out who've really decided not to do that. I heard something the other day, I unfortunately can't remember the name of the band, and it had the worst drummer and the most off-key singer I've ever heard. And it sounded good. I thought, hey, that's original. Because now you know that that's a choice. You know, that isn't because they couldn't be in time and in tune, it's because they chose not to be. So suddenly something that would have been just incompetence 10 years ago becomes an artistic decision now.
Really original.
Really original, yeah. Suddenly to sing really off key is, you think, hey, that's an interesting new way of singing. Why are they doing that? So I think things keep changing their value. You know, they keep reappearing in history, and they have a different value each time they reappear. So it seems like a repetition of something, but in a new context, it isn't a repetition. You know, just like being out of tune now is not a repetition of being out of tune 15 years ago. It's a statement saying, I have decided to be out of tune. I have decided not to fix my tuning up. So it changes value then.
Could that be a choice for you in the studio in the coming days?
Out of tune.
Yeah.
I think that we're kind of ways already.
Yes, we're beyond out of tune. Transcended out of tune.
I think there's some of my favorite moments are whenever we're creating, you know, evolving scenarios of noise, actually.
Yeah, you said something earlier which actually happened 2 or 3 times today, where the three of us are doing something different. and it hasn't kind of gelled yet. It hasn't kind of hit the groove where we're all in it and doing the same thing. In fact, when we were listening back today, I thought those were very interesting, those transition moments where everybody's sort of in a different world for a little while. And there's a very nice period where you start to recognize each other's world. Oops. Fuck you. Thank you. Why did I get that one? It's a fix. The whole thing is fixed. It's rigged.
Let's not go there.
Anyway, sorry, that's all I want to say.
Out of time. We are out of time, actually.
I wanted to ask, how did you feel about those moments, though, where we were all doing something different?
There are so many moments like that.
No, I don't think so.
No.
I hope not.
Oh, I thought you chose some things to play.
I think they're available.
No, they're available.
Oh, available.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you could check it out yourself. See what you think of those transitional moments. What did you choose?
We left it up to, I think you chose four pieces, and then we let the engineer decide.
Oh,
There are
okay.
2, yeah.
Okay.
So there are 2 online.
Mhm.
Okay.
On something.
Well, I thought it sounded kind of amazingly good.
Yeah.
I really liked it. It was
We had a slight, you know, when you're working with new technologies like we all are, there's always a problem of getting set up and getting it all working. So we didn't actually do much this morning. And then this afternoon, we weren't hearing each other very, very well. So actually, none of us really heard what we'd done until we listened back to it on playback in the studio. And it sounded quite a lot more coherent on playback.
it did. Yeah.
But also, if you do listen to these, realize these are works in progress.
I have one final question, which is, I guess, mainly for, no, it's for all three of you, but I'll start by asking Laurie, if it goes with the river, then it goes on the record. That's what you used to agree upon when you did Bright Reds. If it goes with the river, then it goes on the record.
Yes, of course.
That's when you produced Laurie's, when Brian produced Laurie's Bright Red album in '95 in New York City.
Yeah,
Does that thought still apply? That idea?
absolutely. What this was we were making some music, and I used to have a studio that was down into the river before a giant tower was built in front of my building. It's like, we had to, if you can imagine, brick in your own windows, and watch the river disappear. It's a nice painting wall now. It's pretty good. But what we did was kind of just stare out at the river as it was going by. And the river looked different every second. You know, sometimes it would be choppy, and sometimes it would be silky, and sometimes it would be billowing, and all sorts of moods. And so that's a visual track then. So if it goes with the river, meant if the music isn't overwhelming it, if it seems like something natural, that's not being too aggressive or being too shy, then it has this sympathetic sort of relationship. And so if it goes with the river, it goes on the record was the thing. But also, I remember being kicked out of the studio by that one day, which was, I'll never forget it. So we were working on something that sounded just terrible. It was really, really awful. It was a giant failure, and I've always been so impressed with how pleased you are when things fall apart. It's like, this is great. I've learned so much from that attitude of just being so happy when things break, because you get the chance to think, well, what is it that you're trying to do, first of all, and then then you get to sort of start again and try to make it work. So this particular, whatever it was, piece of music was sounding pretty bad, and Brian said, why don't we go take a little walk? And I was like, no, I don't think I should take a walk. I'm a control freak. So he said, no, just go walk around for a couple hours. I go, okay, but I'll be back. And so when I came back, the whole sonic picture had been turned inside out, and the only thing that was good about this piece of music was this little shaker part. And the rest of the music was terrible. So it came back, and the shaker was front and center. It was about, this diameter of this room going, the tiny little drums back there and vocals like, I was like, turn it inside out, do it backwards. It was really, really a thrill to get, to be so flexible, to be so free, and not just to, we're going to make a song that has to be like this. It didn't have to be like anything. And so that was a great, and also the pleasure of failure was also a wonderful thing to get to learn from you. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Can you subscribe to the idea of going with the river?
Well, I just did a residency at the Watermill Center in Long Island, and before I went, I really wanted to get a praying mantis to take with me as a pet, and I looked into it online, and I was trying to find a place where I could just take one for a period and sell it back to the pet shop afterwards. And I didn't get a chance. Didn't get a chance to do that. And then one day I was.
This isn't just for Christmas,
I know. But I was sitting in the at my desk overlooking these beautiful autumnal trees, and there was this praying mantis come walking across the window like that large, and I was just blown away. And every day there were praying mantises all around me. I felt so charmed and blessed by that. So yes, I mean, I wanted to observe these mantises to get inspiration for my work. So I don't know what's going to be the mantis or the river for this experience, but I mean,
Dawn.
dawn. There's this beautiful white dog that lives in the studio.
Dawn.
Dawn, the dog.
It's named after, well, it's older dog, the older dog that died was called Fifi, and this is called Dawn, and that's the title of a Danish song, Fifi Dawn.
He's actually in the recording. He made that.
He's in the
sound.
recording. Oh, the tap dancing, the clones.
Well, no, he made this very high-pitched yawn, and I heard it back whenever we were listening. And I looked to see if he was around, but it was actually a recording.
Well, as you can hear, I think there's a lot in store for us on Saturday. We can't wait.
Don't build up there.
I think you did in your own way.
It's going to be terrible.
I wouldn't even bother.
I think the
turning
most
up.
important thing is Laurie has always spoken to me about in situations, whenever I'm about to perform or go off to make work, she's always said, just make sure to have fun. And I always listen, I always remind myself of that now. And even told Brian that recently as well.
You think I'm here to have fun?
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
It's been fun.
Laurie Anderson. It's been fun. Ebe Oke.